Hey everybody, it's Conner from the HooperCast. I'm solo this week for the 177th episode, iteration of our show. Dustin's doing stuff, and I wasn't doing as much stuff, so here I am doing this stuff alone, baby. Alone! What I'm also going to do alone, let's talk about Letterboxd. Right now, listeners of our show have the chance to win a free 1-year pro account upgrade on Letterboxd. For those of you who don't know, Letterboxd is a social network for film lovers that allows you to track, rate, and review the films you watch. You can follow other members to get recommendations. You can publish lists of films like your top 10 for the year, and a lot more. Like I said, you can follow us on Letterboxd, people like us. Pretty cool. Check that out. You can follow HooperCast on Letterboxd, and we make our own lists, dude. Okay. For instance, we have we basically have the show, what we call the HooperCast show docket, where here's all the movies we just watched that we might be talking about on the show on a given night coming up soon. Everything that's on deck to speak about is on Letterboxd on a list called the HooperCast docket. There's also my list of films I wanted to see ever since 2012 that I never got around to seeing. And then there's a list of films I'm revisiting because I wanted to give them a second opinion. So we like to make lists, and you can make so many lists on Letterboxd. Letterboxd is free to use. There's no subscription fee, but a pro account is going to get you additional features such as a customized summary of your past year's viewing, if you're into that kind of crazy stuff. If you already have a pro account, then you get your year extension for free, son. If you want to enter, all you have to do is listen to our show like you're doing right now. Please don't go away, and we will read the code word at random. The code word is somewhere in this episode right now, and as the month goes on, I'll probably be more obvious about it. But right now, it's the first weekend in September, and I'm not going to tell you shit. I'm not telling you shit right now, okay? I'm not going to tell you jack shit, all right? Somewhere in the episode is the code word or phrase. What you're going to do is send us an email at hoopercast@gmail.com, hoopercast@gmail.com. Enter that code word in the subject line, and make sure to include your Letterboxd username in the email so that we know which account to reward, okay? We're going to select each winner during the last show of each month. You can also follow our show on Letterboxd. If you're wondering why you need to give us your Letterboxd username, for one, we're not asking for your password, just your username. Don't send us your login info, just send us your username. The reason is, if you don't have a Letterboxd account, why in hell are you trying to get a 1-year account free? If you're gonna, take advantage of the offer and you've never used Letterboxd before, at least sign up for an account. I mean, we have one, it's free. What's your problem with free shit, dude? You have a problem? Like, is there a problem with the free stuff that we want to give you? Okay. Letterboxd.com. 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 Enjoy the episode tonight, and have a great weekend. Have a good life, and look out behind you. And we are live. It's the HooperCast. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. Hey, everybody. Hey, buddy. It's Conner. I'm here tonight solo doing the HooperCast number 177 on Facebook Live. So I just thought I'd pop in and say hi tonight and do the show by myself for as long as I could because Dustin has got some crazy stuff happening. And so I'm just going to get a few thoughts out tonight, and when I run out of gas, that is where you'll see me disappear. If you're watching this on Facebook Live, we do this show every week on Facebook Live. We finish it off live, and then we put the whole thing on our YouTube channel. And so it's called the HooperCast, or just HooperCast, even though we call it the HooperCast, or the HooperCast Movie Hour, the HooperCast Live Movie Hour. We call it so many things, but the channel is called HooperCast, and you can find our show on YouTube. And that's what the page looks like. We've done 176 of these things, 177 by the time you're watching this, which is, I think, pretty cool. So, yeah, we do a lot of in-depth film analysis, discussion, film news, talkings about, and all kinds of stuff like that. So if you're not into watching this show, or you're watching it and you're like, oh, the thing's a little bit out of sync, or the frame rate's all off, if you're going to be a snob about it, that's cool. You can use your ears and go to iTunes, where we have the show out as a podcast, just audio. Same episodes, and actually you get the quick pick too, which is weekly box office analysis every single week, which is pretty awesome as well, if I do say so myself. So, yeah, that's pretty exciting. Tonight I want to talk about a few things. This is about as unstructured as it gets. I'm just gonna go until I can't anymore. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was this article on The Hollywood Reporter. This is really more of a discussion type piece for Dustin, but of course now that I've said something, I need to keep going. I don't have the page pulled up, and I'm not going to read the whole article, because you should just go read the article if you're interested in it. But the article is on The Hollywood Reporter. This was on Monday, and it says Spike Lee, David Cronenberg debate future of cinema and how Netflix tracks bathroom breaks. So David Cronenberg and Spike Lee were at the Venice Film Festival, and they were doing a panel, and David Cronenberg talked about maybe doing a possible TV series. There's a costume designer named Sandy Powell who is talking about the technology behind the film The Irishman, regarding de-aging technology, playing into, the costume design. And David Cronenberg and Spike Lee basically talked about, what it's sort of like to be a director in 2018 with Netflix in the mix. It's a very different theater experience, and a very different way we consume stories and movies and visual storytelling from when these two directors first got into film. Spike Lee's talking about teaching grad students at NYU who haven't seen films like Apocalypse Now, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Rashomon, or Lawrence of Arabia. Or if they have, they've watched them on their phones. Excuse me. Cronenberg thought it was kind of cool that people might be watching Lawrence of Arabia on an Apple Watch, and that it's going to beam the sound right into their hearing aids via Bluetooth. But they basically talk about it's an art form that's gone. The idea that there is no communal experience, or that the idea that people are going to have this big shared experience in the theater by watching a movie all at the same time in the same place, that is going away. But that they sort of both admitted that, or maybe it was Cronenberg who admitted that the idea that what we're seeing now, especially with streaming and the decline of theaters, is you've got people who are able to enjoy films as a solitary experience, which has certainly been my experience. I won't speak for Dustin, but I'll say of the two of us, I think Dustin gets more out of the theater experience than I do. There are a lot of people who really enjoy going to the theater still, and I understand that. But what on top of me just being cheap and not feeling like, this movie cost $13, and then in 2 months it's going to cost $13 for me to buy, and I can watch it as many times as I want. Or I can pay 75 cents and rent it at the library 4 months later, or rent it for $3 or $4 on iTunes, or even less on Redbox. So to me, it's like, well, I'm patient enough to outlast the movie being in theaters. Like, I'm okay with not seeing a film in theaters, because the theater experience doesn't mean so much to me that it's going to make a difference, in as much as $5 or $8. But for some people, that theater experience is crucial to seeing a film the way it's meant to be seen, with the speakers and the large screen and 4K projection and, maybe a D-box, maybe a vibrating seat, and a large audience. So all those technical, accoutrements, those are interesting and those can be fun. But this is where I sort of get real preachy about the power of cinema and the power of storytelling. The movie, I've seen plenty of movies that I thought were amazing when I saw them in theaters, and then I watched them again later, and I was like, this is not nearly as good as I remember. And it's really just because I was sort of just taken in by the theater experience. But to me, what's the quality of a film isn't determined by how much fun was this to watch in theaters with a group of people who are reacting to every single shot, or every single joke, every single moment of tension. The quality of movies to me is their staying power. How you can watch them again and again, and they either take on a different context and identity, or they remain ever relevant. A film like Network, which is still one of the most relevant films in cinema history because it predicted our obsession with reality TV and ratings at the expense of people's lives. Which I have to thank my dad for Network, for showing me that movie, because that's one of those films that really stuck with me. And should stick with anyone who sees it. I didn't see that in theaters, and I don't even think it's a film that plays the best in theaters. But my point is that a film to me is best when it can be watched repeatedly over the course of years or decades, and it's just as good because the story is what matters. It's not the quality of the sound, the resolution of it, the seats, the popcorn, the crowd. I want to be able, I was preconditioned to consume movies via streaming or on my phone, because I watched most movies growing up. I watched on one of those little like desktop DVD players, portable DVD players. And it didn't really matter to me that I wasn't watching them on even like a small television. I just liked watching movies. My love of movies superseded technology, the technology required to view them. So I understand Spike Lee's point in that it can be a big communal experience where you experience something with a bunch of people and it's fun. But I'm more with David Cronenberg, where it's like, well, that's fun and everything, but I feel like the real thing to me is how I do view it by myself, because that's how I'm going to view it probably. Every other time I watch it until I don't want, until I'm dead. Like, it'll always be just me by myself, or maybe me with a different person, I'm kind of getting away from the point, but I think it's fascinating to look at the way we consume stories, being really directly affected by things like Netflix and streaming. It's a big deal, but it's kind of cool because it sort of has forced storytellers to change their approach. And it's fun that some directors find it to be freeing and some find it to be sort of like, oh, it's the death of cinema. And I think if you're thinking, oh, like streaming's the death of cinema, I think you're going to get left behind, because what we're seeing is this form of media consumption. It's not going anywhere. It's growing. It's going to keep growing. And if you're sitting around crying about the theaters, as fun as they are for some people, we talk about it on this show all the time, they are going to go away, or they're going to be forced to evolve and become an entirely different experience that offers a lot more. But I'm not sure how that's going to sustain itself. And we've talked ad nauseum about it. Well, I think what's interesting is that, for me, like I said, I can watch movies again and again on my own, and I can get more and more from them. The prime example for me personally is the Marvel movies. It's no secret that I love the Marvel movies, and that I've loved them for 10 years. I've been rewatching. Every time there's a big event one that's coming up, like the next Avengers movie or Captain America Civil War or now Infinity War, for me, it was like, oh, I sort of want to rewatch like the key films leading up to this movie, just to sort of reorient myself in the canon of this story. And now I'm doing that in a very slow but really satisfying way, where I've rewatched the films enough times to where I wouldn't just go back and watch any one of them. I wouldn't go back and watch all of them in sequence ever again, unless it's with a person. And so I've been rewatching them with my mom. Like we just watched Iron Man 3, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and we're supposed to watch Thor: The Dark World at the end of the month. Much to my chagrin, I guess, and hope she likes it. So it's an enjoyable film, I guess. Anyways, I really get a lot out of that experience, because these are films I've seen again and again, and I've sort of been like, okay, I know every shot of this film. I know every little nook and cranny of this story. But I'm watching it with someone who's never seen it before and who's completely floored by this shared universe concept in movies, for example, and the seriousness and the care that's taken with these comic book characters, and how well the films are made. And I get a lot out of that experience, just seeing it through someone's eyes like hers, that's completely fresh to them. You know, you sort of forget like how amazing this thing can be until you're with someone who's never seen it before. So I enjoy that communal experience, but that's one that's on my terms, and it's free, and it's my food and my alcohol is in the house, or my V8 original 100% vegetable juice. But I think the point of the article really is that technology like this is going to keep pushing us forward. It's a really cool article. It's just a sort of highlights from their panel sort of strung together into an article. So it's not like a mind-blowing piece of journalism. But let's see. There's another excerpt I wanted to read from here. Let's see. Maybe it's about Netflix's algorithm. I can't remember what it was. I'm sorry. I think this was Spike Lee. Spike Lee said Netflix is a friend of young filmmakers. These people need product, and that Netflix spent $8 billion this year only for film and series. And the fact that streaming has sort of opened up, and the competition surrounding streaming and original content on these services, that you've got a lot more people able to make content and to make their dream projects, because you could say like, oh, they don't really care the quality of the stuff that they're getting, but they do. But for more than anything, they need to, it's in a way, it's kind of like 24-hour news. You suddenly open up and go, okay, here's all these time slots that we need to fill, and we want to fill them with original stuff. So let's get some content, and no matter what, we need to fill this time. And then the idea, I guess, would be as soon as we fill this time, then we'll start deciding whose time we want filled more, and we'll make each hour better until we have 24 amazing hours of content. And that's kind of how Netflix is doing it, I guess, is just we want some product, we want some content, and then we'll start worrying about quality later. But the good thing is, quality is not their problem on Netflix. They've got plenty of great shows. But a service like Netflix really attracts people like David Cronenberg, because whereas directors like him aren't interested in being a director for hire, you've got David Cronenberg saying that, it would really make him interested in creating a series and being involved in it from that sense. There's downsides to Netflix for creators. There's typically you don't get royalties or any back end money for being involved in a show on Netflix, whereas you might be able to negotiate that for like a network. But so it really does force actors and creators to really get as much as they can up front, money wise, because once the series is done, they're not really going to see a penny from it. So I don't know. That's neither here nor there. To me, that's outside of the creative process. But it is something that creators have to consider when they're going to get in bed with people like Netflix. So there clearly are some drawbacks, but I think it's overall a good thing and a positive thing for storytelling. Why am I telling you all this? I saw the article and I just thought it was interesting to hear, a couple of legendary filmmakers, prolific filmmakers, talking about what they think of streaming. And it's weird because I always expect these big directors to be resistant to it, to go, oh, it's for kids and it's for, it's not for serious filmmakers, but no, they're going, it's a tool and we ought to use it in a responsible and creative way. So that's at the HollywoodReporter.com. That's the article is called Spike Lee, David Cronenberg Debate Future of Cinema. Interesting stuff, I thought, at least. So yeah. What else do I want to talk about tonight? I'll tell you this. I got a couple of movies I wanted to speak about. Oh, nope. Get away. Stop. That I don't really have a lot of pictures for. I'll tell you this. My main recommendation tonight, before I get off the stream, we'll talk about this film. How about this? Let's talk about The Great Alone. So, as she is apt to do, my wife recommended this film to me. But I won't give her full credit. She didn't really recommend it to me. She had not seen it either. We were watching, speaking of Netflix, we were watching White Fang. Netflix has a White Fang animated, film adaptation that's theirs. So I was watching that with my kids and my son. So at some point my wife kind of walked in the room and was just watching it and said, oh, is this have anything to do with the Iditarod? Because she saw the dogs and the sleds and everything. And I was like, no, it's just White Fang. And I think I'd mentioned, like, I don't actually know what the Iditarod is. I hear it all. I've heard that word, that name for years. I don't know what the Iditarod is. And so, like often happens in my house, my wife, it's like a shitty Mad Lib. It's like, you don't know what blankety blank is? And I go, no one ever taught me what blankety blank was. And she goes, oh, I can't believe you don't know what blankety blank is. And I go, nope. Once again, I've gone through life just fine without knowing what blankety blank is. She Googles blankety blank, explains it to me. And I go, whoa, that's incredible. I wish I had known that most of my life. I feel like I'd be happier. So the Iditarod was a mild form of one of those things. If you don't know what the Iditarod is, just like I did, in which case email me and make me feel less alone. Speaking of The Great Alone, so the Iditarod is this race across a portion of Alaska every year where you're pulled by sled dogs. You mush the whole way. It's like 1,000. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. I think it's like 1,000 miles. I should have pulled up this information. But it takes about 8 or 9 days for most people to complete this thing, the people who actually do finish the race. So you're just sledding out there in the freezing cold and you're feeding yourself, feeding your dogs, fishing, but you can, staying in these villages along the way, these checkpoints, and you can eat then, and people, there's like signs waiting for like, we love Jeff or whoever. And it's in a weird, it's kind of like the Hunger Games in that way. There's always cameras. There's always local news media. Tara and I both have worked in local news before. So for us, it was like, can you imagine just being a new reporter in Nome, Alaska? And every year, like, down here in newsrooms down here, for instance, like, it's Wednesday night. We just had a tropical storm Gordon just came through Mobile, early this morning, late last night. And so if you work in local news, it's just all about having a meeting going, okay, we have a red team and a blue team, and we're going to cover the storm. This reporter is going to be in this city. This reporter is going to be over here in this county talking about the floods. This one's going to be talking about the storm surge, blah, blah, blah. And so I imagine if you're in Nome, Alaska, then every year, your local news has a meeting like, okay, who's going to be in who's going to be in Anchorage for the start of the race, who's going to be in Nome for the end, who are we going to put in this middle city at the midpoint to cover it, and I can just imagine sitting in a control room, tuning in live shots, and just every year going like, okay, like, in Mobile every year, it's storm coverage, it's Mardi Gras, it's, the Alabama Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo. There's always an event that every city covers, and to some extent that every city has their thing. I'm sure Boston has the Boston Marathon, and so in Alaska they have the Iditarod, but it's a week and change of coverage, which is pretty insane to be out there in the elements like that. One of the takeaways from this documentary that I found is that Alaska has some tough people, some real tough sons of bitches out there in Alaska, just being awesome and making us all feel inadequate. The subject of this documentary is, oh God, what's his name? Lance Mackey. And I remember his name off the top of my head because his dad's name is Dick Mackey, which is almost Vic Mackey, which is the Shield. But The Great Alone, I'll go ahead and tell you the star rating. I've been bumbling enough about it. The star rating for me, this is a 3.5 star documentary, okay? It's a really cool look at this race that I knew nothing about. Lance Mackey's dad, Dick, I think was one of the founders of the Iditarod, which it was started back in 1973. And in 1978, his sixth attempt at the Iditarod, Dick Mackey won the race. He won it by like a few steps. He beat some dude basically right at the finish, which is pretty cool. And so of course, 30 odd years later, 40 years later, his son Lance competes in the Iditarod. It's a really, I came just to witness like, oh, this is just a race an event I've never witnessed before. So a documentary is always kind of cool just to see a slice of life you've never seen before. But what it also did was a really good gradual unfolding story with Lance. It documents he talks about his parents' divorce and how that sort of led him down a path with substance abuse and then the racing when it began, and then a couple other bumps in the road I don't want to give away. But his relationship with his dad and what racing and winning and all this stuff meant to him. This was a tearjerker. I'll tell you that. I did not expect that in this, but there's a very, very powerful, probably 5 or 10 minutes, right? And, I don't know when it is structurally, but it's really some great moments in here for Lance. I guess if I were to nitpick about it, like why didn't I give it a higher rating? Part of me wanted like more step-by-step explanations of the Iditarod, like, oh, what exactly are the rules? Because it's one of those races where they basically time you while you're racing, so you can stay and sleep in these checkpoints as long as you think you want to, but most people stop and stay the night because you need the rest, you need the endurance. So it's just one of those odd things where you just go, oh, these two guys racing against each other, just sitting at a table eating lunch and talking. And I just think why don't you just get going and keep competing, get ahead of them? But I've never been to Alaska and I've never raced the Iditarod, so I would think that you don't want to do that or you'll pass out or die, So just a little bit more that would make me feel like I understood the Iditarod itself, but I also can see that that's not really the point, and it would have really killed the narrative momentum of this story, because at the end of the day, it really is about Lance, and the Iditarod is just the setting and a little slice of the context of the story. The Great Alone, I think, is a 3.5 star film. I watched this on Netflix, so you can go check it out right now. So once again, my wife has a flawless record recommending things that we watch, except the Emoji Movie. My God, she was wrong about that. Woo! Yikes! I'm gonna get off the live stream, let's see, there it goes again. Goodness gracious! I'm gonna get off the live stream. So I'm gonna split. By the way, nobody watching the live stream right now would know what this necessarily means. But the letterboxed code word for September is simply, what's the thing? That's okay. Like Dr. Phil says, that's okay. That's okay, everybody. That's okay is the code word for Letterboxd. If you want to know, if you are very confused right now, go to the front of the show and listen to the pre-roll about Letterboxd and all the cool stuff they do. But for now, we are going to get off of the live stream. Okay. So thanks for. Oh, where's the links? Where's the slides? There it is. Yep. Watch the rest of the show on YouTube or on iTunes, but definitely watch it. Because that's what most people, that's kind of the idea. So, anyways, I'll see you guys next week on Facebook Live. So, good night for now, and catch the rest of the show on Friday. See ya. Just another quick documentary I want to recommend to people. I don't nearly have as much to say about this in terms of story, because there's not a story. It's not really that kind of a documentary, but there was a PBS/BBC 3-part docu-series called City in the Sky. I think it aired in 2016 or 2015. It's really cool. It's the first episode's called Departure. This is also on Netflix. There's Departure, there's Airborne, and then there's Arrival. And it basically just goes behind the scenes on these 3 portions of air travel. And it is mind-blowing. I loved it. I didn't write down a star rating for this, so I'm just going to sort of wing this review. I'm going to give this docuseries, I'm going to give this I'm going to give it a 4. Let's just give it a 4. The reason it's not a 5 is because even though it was really interesting, I was tired when I watched the second and third one, so I really I kept falling asleep because after a while it's just, okay, facts. It was kind of cool, but I guess because I was disconnected from any one person in it's kind of tough to stick with it sometimes. So you might have to break this up into chunks or just not be tired like I was. But it's really interesting. They have really good animation and CG models in here to help illustrate the points they're making. But they show you the back of baggage claim and how that's automated and how it works. The people in charge of keeping that on track, and the fact that if the thing gets derailed, if they can't fix it within like 10 minutes, then it could delay hundreds of flights because of the chain reaction of the baggage handling not being in sync. Just how fragile the whole system is, but at the same time how ruthlessly efficient it is. I just think that's really, really cool. Yeah, I think it's great. Same with Airborne and Arrival. It handles aspects of flight that typically take place in one of those 3 phases of your flight. So it will probably give you a tad bit of anxiety about flying, especially the airborne stuff. But it's super cool. So if you care at all about how air travel, really the nuts and bolts of how air travel is possible every single day on a large scale, watch this series. It's really cool. Each episode is about 55 minutes. So you can spend a whole evening watching this with your significant other, or you can split it into 3 nights. It's really cool. I loved City in the Sky. So, excuse me. I'm tired right now. Yeah, I'd recommend 4 stars for City in the Sky. That's also on Netflix, so you can check it out over there for free, basically for almost free. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Okay, let's talk about something that's not a documentary. I want to talk tonight, since we're talking about the future of film, I want to talk about a movie called Hardcore Henry. This is not a new release. This, in fact, came out a couple of years ago, I guess. And I rented this at the library. Hardcore Henry stars really only recognizable person in here to me. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about the yawning. Was Sharlto Copley right there on screen, who you would recognize from District 9, from the A-Team, a lot of stuff by now. The gimmick of Hardcore Henry, I've included a couple of behind-the-scenes photos here just to show you the gimmick of Hardcore Henry, which is that the film is all from a first-person perspective. Henry is a cyborg, and so you experience the whole film like a first-person shooter, pretty literally. This is a 3.5 star as well. I think in terms of story, this plot was either overcomplicated or overly simple. It does that thing where it's like there's just a whole bunch of exposition here and there, but they try to do it real quickly to make it sound natural. But what it ends up doing is just you don't really catch all of it. So I was at least really disconnected from the plot. From basically, to me, the movie was Henry's a cyborg and they took his wife, and he's trying to fight to save her, but he's also fighting these thugs from this mega pharmaceutical corporation or something. Something exposition something. So to me, it was just, I'm just watching a guy, essentially fight for survival, and fight for his love. He's, the pawn of a paramilitary entity, takes down the whole organization type of thing. But what is really cool about this movie and why I think it's a 3.5 star and why it's pretty much worth seeing, is really from the technical aspect. This is, like I said, it's an entirely first person perspective narrative action film. It's really thrilling to see sequences like you're looking at on screen where he's on the top of a moving vehicle and he's shooting bullets at all this stuff, in these, obviously, as you can imagine, there's not a lot of visible cuts in this film. A lot of this is just long continuous shots. So you find yourself maybe looking for the cut points and wondering how they did a lot of this stuff in camera. There's a shot there of Henry when he's in the tank, and they just have this camera essentially rigged to the front of this actor's face. And as for Sharlto Copley, who plays several characters in the film, because he, a lot of these characters are avatars that he made for himself. So you see Sharlto Copley get to play with a lot of different personalities and characters in here. But I imagine also, like, a lot of times they enter and exit screen one after the other. So I always wonder, like, oh man, he obviously couldn't change clothes that fast. So I wonder when they did the cuts on this. It's a real interesting experiment in a way to tell a story. You might get a little nauseous during some of these. There's one or two times where I was like, okay, for God's sake, like, it's a little too shaky for me. But for the most part, it's kind of cool because you are Henry. You get to see this action in this story. Oh my God. Literally through his eyes. I think that's pretty interesting. I don't know if you could do any movie like this. There's probably a lot of films you couldn't shoot this way. But this was pretty interesting because Henry can't even speak. And so it's just kind of cool. It's just cool. It's just a fun concept. I don't know what else to say. It's just just beating around the bush here. It's a fun concept. I'm not sure if it's, just to speak of the Cronenberg Spike Lee article, is this the future of cinema? No, but I don't think this will be the last film told in this way. I just don't know. Like I said, the types of films you can tell, the types of stories you can tell with this filmmaking technique are probably pretty narrow, and a lot of the plot and character of this film really could be served well by telling the story this way. So it's just a fun, different way to consume a story. So I think it's worth checking out. I got this at the library, like I said. So you can do the same, and it's really up to you what you want to do. All right, let me get rid of the slides for Hardcore Henry real quick. There we go. Let's clean the attic a little bit. here's a film I'm revisiting. So as I said, there's films that I either probably have previously talked about on this show, or at least previously seen and had an opinion on that may or may not have changed. The next one in this series is The Master from 2012, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Joaquin Phoenix and the late and very great Philip Seymour Hoffman. This film stars Joaquin Phoenix. And I got this at the library. This wasn't available to rent anywhere. No streaming service, not easily accessible. The first time I saw this film, I think I saw it on film at the Crescent Theater in Mobile. I remember at the Crescent, I was fighting to stay awake because the pace of this film is so slow. Don't be fooled by this picture of Philip Seymour Hoffman having a really good time riding a motorcycle in the desert. A lot more of it is like that, where you're just looking at Joaquin Phoenix making a strange face and sort of squirming in his seat, or long, wide shots that are of characters not doing much. All right, this film is about Joaquin Phoenix stumbling upon a science fiction writer played by Hoffman, who has essentially started this pseudo-religious movement with a good amount of followers and disciples, if you will, with his wife, his children, in-laws, cousins, and it's kind of a little bit pointing towards Scientology in that way. Philip Seymour Hoffman does kind of resemble L. Ron Hubbard a little bit. But it's really just about this truly lost individual, Freddie Quell, played so well by Joaquin Phoenix, and this kind of egomaniacal, but genuinely well-meaning, I think, I'm not sure, cult leader played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. Paul Thomas Anderson is a great director. His frames, the way that his subjects look on film, are fantastic. There Will Be Blood is this way. I like it for that reason. He makes his actors look amazing on camera. Just the shot design, the deep focus, really distinguishing them from the background. It's just not a bunch of flat angles. It's really well done cinematography and production design and lighting, and not to mention the performances. My God. The problem is, in terms of here's the double-edged sword with acting in Paul Thomas Anderson's films. As an actor, you really get to show a lot of the little things, those little moments where, maybe other directors would just shoot it with a couple of close-up shots and cut around like the little minutia of your performance and just have you speak in the lines in character. Whereas this is a lot of long takes, wide shots, long moving tracking shots, a lot of not looking at the person they're talking to. Just a lot of maybe one character speaking and the other character, it's an over the shoulder shot, and where most directors might cut to the other actor to get a reaction, they might stay on the other actor to get just their performance. And so it's a really interesting way of shooting a scene, which I kind of like. It's a lot more realistic in terms of the way people talk and behave at each other, and the way a conversation, you really feel like you're watching a conversation unfold in real time, which really keeps you invested in the scene. The problem with that is that it makes pacing into an issue. The film can really lose momentum fast, and I feel like this kind of happened with me with this movie. And like I said, this is the second time I've seen this. So there were times where I sort of thought, okay, this is getting a little slow because they don't want to cut away from this wide shot, because they like the performances, I guess, and it's a style that they don't want to cut away from the shot and be called a standard filmmaker. But at least I would have been a little bit more invested in what was going on. This is a 2-star film, and it really does kill me to say that. And perhaps in the course of explaining it, I'll bump it up a little bit. But when I wrote this review originally, it's a 2-star. This film did piss me off. So it really was a 1-star for a while. The only reason it gets 2 stars is for Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix. Their performances in this film are top notch. Every scene that they have together is remarkable. It's tremendous. Okay. There's a scene in particular where Philip Seymour Hoffman the first big scene together is when he is evaluating Freddie Quell. He's evaluating Joaquin Phoenix. He's asking all these questions about his life. And they go through this series of questions 2 or 3 times, and you see Freddie Quell sort of go from not taking it that seriously to like really, really being opened up against his will, and sort of forced to go into his past and his psychology, the why and how that he behaves. He is a effed up dude. He really is. He's a strange person. And the kind of person who would really need the direction that being involved in one of these movements could offer him. And so he's sort of the prime guinea pig for someone like Hoffman, who is looking to prove to people that his I don't want to say psychology, I'm not going to say treatments. It's not about doctor patient. It's his life coaching, I guess you could say, works on people. So whether he means well with this movement or not, he has the perfect guinea pig in Joaquin Phoenix. So I didn't really get a sense whether or not that that the whole thing was just BS and that he was just taking advantage of people, or whether or not he really felt like he was doing something good for people. Maybe the film is explicit about that. I just can't recall, and it didn't seem plain to me. It's more interesting to not know exactly his motivations, I think, for starting this cult, I'm going to call it. Yeah, but so the performances are so good, and every time they're on screen together, I was like, oh, okay. Like that, I would sort of wake up. The problem is the plot is so meandering and it has no direction, to the point that everything else about the film is boring and not engaging to me. It's well made. It's worthy of P.T. Anderson's talents. It's just not going to be worth it for most audiences. I just don't think most average people who want to see a good film are going to watch this film and be satisfied with it. There's no, in terms of narrative structure, it's not very standard in terms of building towards something. So there's not like a sense of a ticking clock, like, oh, I can tell where we are in the story. So it's fun to see the characters kind of progress, but you'd have no clue. It's one of those where unless you check the time code, you have no idea when the movie's about to end. And I don't really like that. I sort of like knowing where I am in the story. It just makes me feel nice and safe and loved, I guess. Yeah, I just don't recommend it to most people, to the general audience. It's going to be boring. It's going to be confusing. And it's just going to be long and meandering. And you're going to be like, why did I don't even understand. What am I doing? But to people who can really, and I feel like people who can really appreciate it as a movie have probably already seen it. This movie is several years old. So yeah, I give The Master a 2-star just because I just wouldn't want to watch it again at this point. But I have to acknowledge the well crafted, like this movie on a technical level is really well crafted, and on an acting level it's well crafted. It's just story, momentum, clarity, all that stuff is just not there. And so I have to dock it points for that. I just must. That's what they told me. I think we're gonna put the show to bed at this point. I could have said there's a couple more things we can review, but I'm gonna hang on to those. Throat's killing me, all this talking. So yeah, once again, if you would love to subscribe to our YouTube channel before you leave today, that would be tremendous. Go to YouTube, just go to HooperCast on YouTube. It's pretty easy to find. And like I said, we're also on iTunes. So if you want to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we are available. And yes, it doesn't cost you anything. The show is free. And it's just, we enjoy doing it. It's really just for us, but if you want to be a fly on the wall, it's another reference. If you're paying attention to David Cronenberg, if you want to be a fly on the wall, you can be, and that's okay with us. We're not threatened by you. It's fine. It's all right. Oh, that's Letterboxd, but we're not going to talk about Letterboxd right now because we already talked about it. That's the show tonight, you guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks, everybody who watched the live stream. Muchas gracias. See y'all next week. See you on Monday for the quick pick, and have a good weekend. Get out there, see some good movies, and we will see you back here next week on the HooperCast. Arrivederci.